And welcome to the Montana Sportscast podcast. Joining us today is Stan Ozark from Glasgow. Stan, how we doing up north?
Oh, it's a nice day up here. The weather's supposed to be nice all week. I mean, this time of year, that's pretty much what you talk about, right? The weather and
Yeah,
basketball and wrestling, probably
yeah,
for
yeah.
sure.
Well, we can talk about balloons now too, I guess, but
Yeah, well,
we'll leave that to somebody else.
I'm sure they'll move on to something else here in the next day or two. So I think,
Yeah, yeah. Well, let's talk a little high school sports. That's a lot more interesting and more fun.
yeah, right. I broadcasted a couple games, actually 4 games this week. Starting on Thursday night, North Country came to Glasgow to take on the Scotties. The Scotty boys winning pretty easily over the North Country boys. Just and I've touched on this kid before. It just every week he gets better. It's that eighth grader Cade Hudema for Glasgow who's now playing a lot. I think at the beginning of the year, Coach Paul Yoakum was bringing him in for 5, 6 minutes. Now he's probably getting 20, 25 minutes a game. And for an eighth grader on Thursday against North Country, Hudema got a double double. He had 21 points and 11 rebounds for the Scotties. And
Hmm.
then on Saturday, in a Scotty win over Scobie, Cade Hudema had 22 points against Scobie and was a real significant part of the Scotties picking up that win. And we've talked about this before. To me, it's just incredible to see these eighth graders having such a big impact as they are, at least in our area for Glasgow for sure. Glasgow also has an eighth grade girl, Maisie Yoakum, who's playing significant minutes as well. She had 15 points for the Scotties against Scobie. So Glasgow, a Class B school, you don't think that maybe those eighth graders would have an impact, but they certainly are having an impact in Glasgow. And I'm not sure what that impact is across the rest of the state. But around here, it's fun to watch. It's fun to watch a 6'4" eighth grader just fit in like he belongs out there. So,
Yeah, I'm gonna jump in here real quick, Boomer. Jeff Graham's daughter. They live in Butte now. She's an eighth grader. She plays for Butte High as an eighth grader at the double A level. And I was going to do some checking to see just how many eighth graders are playing at the double A level this year.
wow.
And I haven't got to it, but
It,
she had, the other night they played Butte Central at the Civic Center and she had 18 points, I believe.
okay. I knew that was Jeff's daughter. I guess I wasn't aware she was an eighth grader and playing for Butte
Yeah.
High. Wow.
Yeah.
I knew that there was a Graham. I guess I didn't know it was an eighth grader. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Holy cow. Isn't that
Yeah.
significant? That is a
Yeah.
big deal.
Yeah, it is. It is. It's changes the landscape a little bit.
The North Country girls ranked number 1 in the state, and I guess I talk about them all the time, but they're a fun team to talk about. They're 16-0 on the season. A couple games left. They have Luster and Fraser, which they will be favored to win. So they'll be looking like they'll go into district tournament unbeaten. But I was taking a look back in the last 7 games. North Country has given up just 143 points. So they're only given up 20 points a game in their last 7 games. And that's what really struck me in that game against Glasgow. They actually held Glasgow scoreless in the first half of that game. I think it was 21-0 at the half. Their defense is so smothering. Glasgow's main focal point was to try to get the ball inside, which is almost impossible against that defense uh, with the big girls that they have, Tegan Erickson and Paige Wasson. Erickson 6'2", Wasson's almost 6 foot. Such long arms and long legs. Glasgow was trying to get that ball into the post and couldn't even see the post player. And Glasgow ended up turning the ball over 30 times in that ball game. And again, they didn't
Wow.
score in the first half. And my broadcast partner Derek Beadle and I think in that first half, Glasgow might have had 2 or 3 decent shots, what you would classify as good shots. That's how stifling that North Country defense is. That is, for those who love defensive basketball, you have to watch this North Country team play. Pretty significant. who knows what the rest of the state will bring to that state tournament, obviously. But the North Country certainly will be favored at the district tournament, which starts next weekend in Glasgow, and probably should be favored going into the Eastern C Divisional. 406 MT Sports did a profile of the Plentywood girls who are unbeaten as
Right.
well. Plentywood's in the Eastern C Division, and they returned four starters from last year's team. They lost Liv Wangren to Montana Tech. Was a heck of a player, and her dad Randy coached them for years. So they got a new coach, but they returned four starters from last year's team that made it to the state tournament. So they certainly could be a roadblock for North Country at that divisional tournament. There's also some other teams out there in that Eastern C. It's Culbertson, who's only lost to Plentywood twice, and they had a loss to Savage. Circle, Freud, Medicine Lake, Savage, Bainville, and even a Fairview team out there that will probably make that divisional tournament, which will be in Wolf Point this year. North Country will be the favorite, obviously coming out of the District 3C. And I'm not sure who will follow them. There are three teams that come out of the 3C to join five teams out of the 2C for that divisional tournament. And after North Country, I think it's pretty much up in there how that will turn out, what teams will be behind them. So at Eastern C Divisional, probably will be a Plentywood North Country matchup, which it has been for the last several years. But um, and I haven't seen Plentywood play this year, but reading that article from 406 MT Sports, Emma Brensdahl, she seems to be leading them in scoring. Annie Call is such a great athlete, cross country runner, a track athlete. Mallory Tummerup, Audrey Sampson. So they got some really nice athletes. Paige Curtis are there as well. So that Plentywood team could be fun to watch as well, taking on North Country. Let's see. As far as Class B goes, Wolf Point suffered their first loss. The Wolf Point boys suffered their first loss of the season as they were beaten by Baker um, last week. And so they'll look to rebound from that. Wolf Point, though, has clinched the District 2B title. They'll go in as a number one seed into that District 2B tournament, which really could be just a dogfight for the District 2B for the boys. Obviously, Malta's there. Malta got what I like to call a signature win, a win outside of the district that is significant. They beat Rocky Boy pretty handily last
Yeah.
week. So that's a big win for Malta. Malta, uh, Wolf Point, as far as significant wins, those two wins that they've had over Malta are their significant wins. I think Wolf Point and Malta are going to battle it out. But right behind them, that you have a Poplar team that's real solid. Poplar plays Malta this week, and we'll see how Poplar matches up with the Mustangs. And then Glasgow is there as well. And the Scotties have Poplar and Harlem this week. If they can win out this weekend, they'll climb up, finish in third and in that district, and would open up with Malta at the state tournament, or excuse me, at the district tournament rather than having to play the 4 or 5 game against Harlem and then have to match up against the number one seed Wolf Point. So that 2B is in flux at this point, but some good matchups coming up this weekend. That's for the boys. For the girls in the District 2B, it's all about the Malta Mets. They have just the losses to Havre on the season. They've ran through their
Right.
season, and I've talked about them, but this is I have Brenner Flayton. Bob and I both know Brenner. Brenner's the activities director at Glasgow High School, and he's a numbers guy. And he's put some incredible stats together on the Northern B. Malta, as far as girls basketball goes, since since the 77-78 season, they've won 17 divisional championships. In fact, Malta has won more divisional championships than everyone else combined in the division when you take Fairfield out of the equation. Malta just a regular visitor to the state tournament, but Malta's won 17 divisional championships. Fairfield's won 12. This is for the Malta M Mets, 31 state appearances, 10 state championships, and they've been in 18 state championship games. Since I've started in Glasgow, which was 1993, Glasgow has appeared. The girls have appeared in one state championship game, and the boys have appeared in one state championship game. That's it. When you compare Glasgow to Malta in basketball, it's not even really a comparison. And when you talk about the District 2B, the Malta girls have won the District 2B title 23 times, and Wolf Point's won it 5. That's the closest competitor. You talk about domination in basketball, the Malta Mets, they're it out here. And they will win the 2B title again this year. I don't see any competition for them. And when it comes to the Northern B, as far as girls basketball goes, Fairfield's is there right again. Fairfield
Right.
is 8-1 in conference play, but there's some competition there in the 1B. Fairfield, Cutbank, Conrad, and Shelby are all right there. Look for those 4 teams to advance out of the 1B for the girls. For the 2B, you've got Malta, Poplar, Wolf Point, and Glasgow probably will advance out of the 2B to that divisional. But you have to play the games, right? And the district
That's
tournament
right.
coming up next weekend. So, and for the Northern B boys in the District 1B, Fairfield just the one loss on the year, and that was to Belt. But uh, they will finish the season with games against Shoto and Haber. Shelby 6-3 in conference play. They have a cut bank matchup, and then they'll play Malta. That'll be one of those games out of conference. It'll be good to see how they match up between the 1B and the 2B.
Yeah, definitely. You talk about Malta, but you just go back and look at their record for their girls that have been played for the Lady Grizz, and just it seems like almost every year there was somebody from Malta going D1 basketball on
Gonna
the
go
women's
play,
side.
yeah, Division 1 and,
Yeah,
specifically for the Lady Grizz. They also had Bobby Knutson go play for MSU Billings, and she was an
right.
incredible basketball player, and, I don't know the story behind that, but Bobby was such a good high school basketball player, you would have thought she, certainly would have an impact at the Division 1 level too. So
Yeah, I actually called several of those games when the Rocky MSUB games, and she definitely, I think she probably could have played D1, pretty easily actually. But
But, yeah, the Malta girls, it's just I guess the one word I used over and over is just domination, um,
yeah,
and the battles that they've had with Fairfield over the years, I mean, I don't have it in front of me, but how many times have they faced off against each other in a state championship game? Um, the Northern B has such a great legacy of basketball for both boys and girls in producing state champions, and, it certainly could be that way again, this year, with some quality teams that'll come out of the Northern B into that state tournament for boys and girls.
yeah, I think you got, of course, you got Big Fork in there, and Loyola on the boys side, pretty strong. On the girls' side, I kind of like the Anaconda, to be honest with you, but they lost their best player to a knee injury early, and they've been doing pretty well since then. But Big Fork girls, they're pretty decent as well, up there in the top spot on Class B as well. But it's getting to be that time of the year, Boomer, when things start to get interesting.
Well, it's and I think we talked about this last week, but it I haven't been to a lot. I mentioned the Scotties haven't been real successful in advancing to the state tournament, so I haven't seen a lot of state tournaments. But when the Scotty girls made it last year, it's just a totally different world there with the size and the quickness that teams bring to the court, and that I guess that would be a concern, for example, for the Malta boys in this and the Wolf Point boys. They don't have that huge team that they with a front line of 6'3", 6'4", 6'5". They're a little smaller. They can shoot the ball really well. Both teams shoot the ball really well, but how will they handle teams that bring a lot of size to the court? But they can outshoot anyone, either of those teams. Fairfield returns a lot of players from last year's team. I think
Right.
they lost the Flores kid, and who is an impact player, but and Fairfield, just the tradition and the athleticism and basketball prowess they bring to the court, they'll always be there for both boys and girls at the end of the day.
Yeah, and you talk about the state tournament, the physicality of the game definitely changes at that tournament, I think. It seems to be a little more physical than your regular season games in your district and even your divisional tournaments. And you got you got referees coming from all over the
Yeah.
state coming together and refereeing together. You being an official understand that. It's a challenge for those officials as well, I would think, coming together and working with people that you don't know.
Yeah, they're working with folks that they've never worked with a three-man crew on a pretty big stage as well, right? I mean,
Yeah, yeah,
even the most veteran officials have to have some kind of nerves when you step onto that court at a state tournament. But it is, you know, I guess just kind of getting off just a bit when you talk about officials, though. What a great job these guys do under the
no,
circumstances they're put in, both men and women, on the court. And I read some stuff what happened this weekend in some games, just crazy stuff that shouldn't happen in high school basketball, whether it's fans or coaches in their treatment of officials. And we just have to be better. And I think that as fans and as announcers, whatever, we have to be better because I know a lot of these officials around our area, they don't have to be doing this,
no.
and they're as busy as they want to be. They're away from home 3 nights a week, 4 nights a week, not making much money. Um, these are professional people, and we just need to be better. And I hope that we do, or else we aren't going to have officials out there. I mean, the quality
Yeah.
of officials is just going to get worse as the years go on because the good people aren't going to do it anymore. They don't have to.
Well, and I don't want to take time away from your other stuff, but I totally agree with you. That um, it just the fans and coaches as well, but they need to realize that. Just like you say, we're not going to have officials, and
Yeah.
I think we're seeing it not only in officials, Boomer, but also in coaches. I mean, there's been a lot of coaches, my age and younger that have retired or basically walked away from the game in the last 5 years. And I talk to a lot of them, and a lot of them say that they're just it's not worth putting up with the parents and the fans, and all the stuff that goes with being a coach anymore. And I think that's hurting basketball for sure. You're getting some ex- inexperienced coaches coming in, coaching kids, and I just think that I've fought come out and say it. And I was probably one of the worst fans when my kids were playing when I was sitting in the stands, but need to clean it up a little bit. It's getting out of hand, I think.
You're absolutely right when you talk about coaches. I have relationships with quite a few coaches, and they will talk to me about whether it's a phone call or text messages that are just ridiculous coming from parents. And why a parent would think that they're able to talk to someone like that, it just blows my mind. It's very emotional. I mean, I have a kid, and fortunately for me, he's not involved in those football or basketball because that is tough. But he competes in cross country. He's in golf, and even in those sports, your emotions sometimes get the best of you. But you can't take it out on the officials or the coach. I mean, we all have to act like adults here and set a good example. I've refereed football for over 30 years, and I still just find it incredible the things people will say to you from the sidelines as an official. And all I think about when that happens is, why do you think you have the right to be able to say something as outrageous as you just did to a person you don't even know?
Yeah,
Um, and it all comes back to just we all need to be better,
yeah,
and we need to do better, or else it's like you said with coaches are just going to be, I don't need this either. I think a coach in the Glasgow school system, a head coach, makes maybe $3,500 and you take a look at Paul Yoakum or Cammy Graham, who coach of the boys and girls, and the hours that they put in. you know it's less than $1 an hour or 50 cents an
Yeah,
hour in the time that they put in, and that doesn't even include the time they put in the summer. We have to be better to everyone. We're all just human beings. So
yeah.
that's where I stand on
No,
that.
no, and I know that there's a lot of states right now that it's gotten to the point where your sub varsity games, there's an assistant coach from each team
Yeah.
doing it on the floor officiating because they do not have enough officials. And in football, there was a lot of games from Friday had to be switched from Friday
Yeah.
night to Saturday because of lack of officials. And um, Western A almost, I mean, they struggle to get officials in soccer. There was even talk that they may not be able to have a season in the Western A
Wow.
soccer because they could not find officials to do the games. And, uh, it just needs to be cleaned up, for lack of better words. And the National Federation has put out a lot of information out there. The high school associations have, and people need to, for lack of better words, need to wake up.
I On the basketball level, I've it's been refreshing to see that there's some new people out officiating. I'm seeing some younger people or some newer people that are getting out there, which is really nice. I will tell you, in football, our Glasgow crew, which has 7 officials, we we have 3 or 4 of us over 20 years of experience. How much longer is that going to continue, when Stan decides to hang it up or John decides to hang it up? And then all of a sudden, Glasgow doesn't have anyone to do their JV games, junior high games. You know,
Yeah,
Glasgow went over to Fairfield this season to play football. And they played varsity Friday, had a JV on Saturday, and they had to get people out of the stands to referee the JV game
yeah,
on Saturday. It's that crazy. I mean,
yeah,
um, and you're right. I've been involved in games that had to be switched from Friday to Saturday just so they could have officials. And it doesn't stop not everyone, it's a small minority of fans, but they
yep,
need to wake up for sure.
yep, yep. Well, we kind of
Well,
got off track there, Boomer, but it's something that needs to be addressed. And um, you know, I trust your judgment to not go wild on me while we're doing this to talk about it. But speaking as an official, you understand it as well. But yeah, it's something that definitely needs to be discussed. Um, that's for sure. But do you have anything else on basketball?
not really. Just to kind of looking forward to, this is the end of the regular season, and then next week we get started with tournaments, district tournaments, get underway for Class B and C. And we have some really good teams over here in Northeast Montana, and looking forward to getting that postseason started. It's always fun to get into tournament time. I think we have 16 games on the radio next week just for Class C, and we'll have 4 or 5 in Class B games. So for radio fan or folks of radio, get used to it because the next 3 to 4 weeks are going to be all basketball as you get into Thursdays, Fridays, and Saturdays for sure.
Well, save enough voice to be able to talk to us next week.
Yeah, well, I'll be at state wrestling this weekend, so yeah, I
Yeah.
should be ready to go. So
All right. Thanks for coming on, Boomer. Appreciate it as always. And I'd like to thank our guests that come on the show and talk about Montana high school sports. Without them, this show would not be possible. And once again, if you like this podcast, please click on the subscribe button below to get alerts when we have up a new podcast.